It's the first civil dialogue of the 2015-2016 session, so we have a lot to talk about with Assembly Speaker Robin Voss, representing the 63rd District.
Nice to see you again, Steve.
Thank you. Assembly Democratic Leader Peter Barca, representing 64th District.
Good morning, Steve. Good to be back.
Back in civil dialogue. We took a pre-election break.
This should have been 2 weeks ago.
It's
been
a few months. I want to talk about a few non-budget issues, and then I have a list of updates on some budget issues. Can we do that, gentlemen?
Sure, whatever.
Great.
Okay. First of all, the 70-mile speed limit is going to be up next Tuesday in the Assembly.
First example where I think Peter and I agree.
Completely.
Yep,
Okay.
I think most states all around us, hopefully it'll pass with broad bipartisan support.
And it's going to be up Tuesday.
Yep,
Excuse me,
Tuesday.
Peter.
Oh, no, I think it will pass. I mean, I think it was passed. There was only one person against it in committee.
Yeah.
I think generally people accept it. And, and the other thing that's important for people to realize is this doesn't make every road 70 miles an hour. It
Right.
gives the Department of Transportation the ability to determine where it's safe to have it 70 miles an hour. I think it's a good plan.
Hopefully between Madison and Milwaukee, that'd be a good thing for us.
The bill that was up in the Senate committee yesterday that would waive the 48-hour wait to buy a handgun, is that going to move first in the Senate or the Assembly, Mr. Speaker?
We haven't talked about which is going to move first. I mean, it's a bill I strongly support. I think that we now see, especially with the instant background check at the federal level, there's no need to have a 48-hour waiting period. We know that if the goal is to stop someone who's committed a crime from getting a weapon, that's already the law at the federal level. Ours was put in before the feds had the instant check, so all we're really doing is updating it to kind of go with the times where literally you can do it almost instantly.
Yeah, our 48-hour wait passed in 1976. Peter, your thoughts on the issue?
Well, I have some concerns. I mean, I haven't really analyzed where law enforcement is on this issue. That generally informs my decision. I think it's very important that we analyze that. I also want to look and see, I mean, is there some middle ground there, 24 hours perhaps, so you at least get that cooling off period for an angry wife or angry husband or things of that sort, which I think is part of the reason why it was put in place in the first place. So.
Do you want the Assembly to consider this bill prior to the budget votes, Mr. Speaker?
It could. I mean, like I say, we haven't really fleshed out the entire spring calendar. There's a lot that we have to talk about. It's one of those topics where it seems like in our caucus it has pretty broad consensus. It sounds like it's similar in the Senate. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was before the budget.
The third issue I want to talk about, the John Doe changes. They were also up in the Senate committee yesterday. Do you hope the Assembly acts on that prior to the budget?
We could. I mean, I guess, as you know, the Supreme Court has action before them, too.
Yes.
So I would really like to make sure that the Supreme Court takes action so that this is kind of closed once and for all, so we don't have the potential for, this issue continuing to rear its ugly head. So definitely we have, once again, strong support. I won't say unanimous because we haven't talked about it in depth, but I just really feel our caucus is strongly behind it. So we'll support it one way or another. It's just whether or not it's before the budget, I don't want to say.
No, this is an issue that Democrats don't support, correct, Peter?
Absolutely, entirely opposed to this measure. There was a good hearing yesterday. Michael McCann, who I think is widely regarded by people on both parties as having high integrity, he just said this was a huge mistake. He said that this is a tool that prosecutors should have, that it's used judiciously, and I think it'd be just a major mistake. Even Strang, who is the attorney that's sort of pushing this, acknowledged that he doesn't know in any cases where this has been abused. So I just see absolutely no reason for it. We live close to the border. We have political corruption on a regular basis in Illinois, and I don't want to open up any possibility that we have that type of corruption here in Wisconsin. And remember, when we pass these bills, it's not just for the next 5-10 years. It's for the next 50 years. And we have no idea who's going to follow us in these seats, and we just have to be very cautious and protect the public. Wisconsin has a reputation for clean, open, and transparent government, and I think that should be jealously guarded and protected at every turn.
Well, it still will once this bill passes, because, as you know, it still allows John Does to happen. All it does is require that there have to be an endpoint, so you can't have a witch hunt that goes on forever. It restricts the crime, so you can't have a witch hunt. I mean, I'll tell you, it's not only about politicians. I mean, when you look at the John Doe statute, it basically gives carte blanche to the prosecutor to really go and try to find a way to make a case. Now, many times they do it judicially, and it's not used all the time. You're right. It's pretty rare in Wisconsin. But I think that just from a civil libertarian standpoint, giving all that power to the prosecutor to not just say, we're going to go after you, which is it's within their constitutional right, but to have no end to how long it can be, how much it can cost your family, what's going to happen with your job, all of those things. I think reasonable restrictions are what this bill's all about. So we'll still have the opportunity to go after corruption, because trust me, that is never going to be something that we don't want to ensure that, probably from both parties, happens, that nobody commits a crime like that. But I also believe that you have to have some reasonableness to the statute.
I'm glad to hear the Speaker say, though, that he will look to wait till after the Supreme Court action. I think that would be very prudent on their part.
There was also testimony yesterday, Peter, that kind of speaks to what Robin was saying, that this only would remove these crimes from the from John Doe's, that prosecutors would still be able to convene grand juries and use their own investigations.
Like all the other 49 states.
So, but you still oppose it.
People in the judicial community that I've talked to feel this is a tool they need. They feel it does help to maintain our clean, open, and transparent government. They think that it helps to ferret out those people who are crooks and prosecute them and put them in jail. And I trust our judicial process, and I haven't seen any compelling evidence whatsoever why we should change it.
One more non-budget issue I want to touch on. Governor Walker, I think it was an op-ed piece in the Weekly Standard, said he looks forward to signing a bill that would ban abortions after 20 weeks. And I interviewed Senate President Mary Losick. She's going to be the lead sponsor. Is that something you hope is taken up in this House prior to the budget, Mr. Speaker?
Once again, it might not be prior to the budget, so I don't want to say that it will be. It's something we're going to take a look at. I mean, the basic idea behind the bill is to say that when an unborn child can feel pain, that's a point where technology should say, geez, if we're inflicting pain in this child, it's probably not even where we should go, even under the constraints that the U.S. Supreme Court has given us under Roe versus Wade. So the goal is not just to pick an arbitrary timeline, but it's to say, if a child can feel pain, we don't want to inflict that on the baby. So I think that's a reasonable place to be. I mean, medical advances are happening all around the world. Who would have thought 20 years ago that you would be able to see the fingers of an unborn child inside the womb early on in a pregnancy? I mean, technology is changing people's views on when life really begins, when abortion should be allowed. So I think saying that when a child can feel pain is something that we should put in the standards, I don't think that's too radical.
Prior to, Peter, can I jump in a minute?
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah.
What exceptions do you think should exist to that 20-week rule, Mr. Speaker?
Well, for me, I have always believed in exceptions for rape, incest, or when the life of the mother is in danger. I took that when I ran for office in 2004. I've consistently believed in that. I think that when we look at allowing that late in the pregnancy, by that point, we would have already seen if they had filed a report for rape or if they had had some sort of bad situation. So that's something I'm open to. I haven't really talked about it with Mary to see what's included in her version of the bill. But that's where we want to at least have the discussion.
Are there votes in your caucus for that ban after 20 weeks?
You know, we haven't talked about it, but I think almost every person, if not all of our members, consider themselves pro-life. So when you look and say it's about when a baby can feel pain, I think there would be broad support. We just haven't caucused on it yet.
Thanks for your patience, Peter.
Sure.
Your feeling about
Well,
the
my
bill?
feeling is, look, the Supreme Court just decided in January not to take up the issue. Lower courts, I believe it was the Federal Appeals Court, has ruled it's unconstitutional. And so from my standpoint, you've got about a dozen states who have passed this, and for us to pass it would be passing a bill knowing that at this juncture it's still unconstitutional. You know, we have a huge budget deficit, you know, a structural deficit of $2 billion. I don't think we should waste any more money on attorneys. This would be the wrong time to bring this forward, and I hope that we don't. I mean, we have enough, you know, polarizing, divisive issues here to last us for a long time. I know the governor wants to pass all this right-wing extremism to help him in his Republican primary. I get that. But I don't think we have to assent to every single issue that he wants to polarize us on. I think it'd be a huge mistake. And I certainly feel that, you know, it's been nearly a year since we passed a significant economic development jobs type initiative. And let's get to that. That's what the people want us to deal with. So I hope that we'll move on to that agenda, the people's agenda, and stay away from these polarizing extreme issues, and certainly stay away from wasting all of this money on issues that we know are going to put us in court.
Let me just correct two things. We don't have a $2 billion structural deficit. That was only the
wish list. You mean billion? You said million.
Billion, I'm sorry. We don't have a structural deficit at all because that was only the wish list of the agencies that are given to the governor. So now that the budget's been introduced, it's in balance. Might not like the way it was balanced, and I respect that, but it's in balance. So let's just make sure that's on the record.
But it's a structural deficit. Going forward, the obligations that the state has made for future bienniums exceed what we expect our revenue to be. That's what a structural deficit is. That's a deficit, and they always use when Democrats are in the governor's governor's chair. But of course, as PolitiFact pointed out, the governor changes the definitions when it suits his own purposes.
I just have a follow-up question on the abortion issue. Is it fair to say this issue, banning abortions after 20 weeks, didn't play a central role, at least in the election for governor, Mr. Speaker?
I mean, I think pretty much every single person in Wisconsin knew that Mary Burke was pro-abortion and Scott Walker was pro-life. Okay. I mean, I don't think anybody questioned that. Okay. Well, but did they talk about it all the way through it? I don't think they probably did a lot. I mean, it was focused mostly on how Mary Burke attacked Scott Walker and his record, frankly. So I think that she chose to do that. I mean, we passed pro-life legislation. She made an issue of that. So it's no surprise that when we come back, if there were other things we can do to protect unborn children, we do that too.
Well, worse than that. I mean, and John Torinas, who I have great respect for, you know, a former business editor from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, leans conservative, I believe supported Scott Walker openly. He just wrote just a powerful editorial exactly on this point, saying, don't elections mean anything anymore? You run for election based on a certain agenda. But then what the governor does is he springs forward these issues, actually quite to the contrary what he runs on. I mean, of course, we all know that on September 2nd, he told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that he would not support right to work in this session. Of course, he signed it anyway, despite misleading and really deceiving people. This is another issue that I understand. Now, I've not seen the ad myself, but that he ran some ad in October deceiving people, almost implying as if he was pro-choice, that abortion should be between a woman and her doctor. Now, I've not seen the ad, so I want to make that very clear. And I'm going to follow up on this maybe for our next show. But the issue is he clearly didn't run on this. This wasn't one of his agenda items. If you talk to people on Main Street and said, what is Scott Walker running for re-election as governor to accomplish? Nobody would say that he wanted to, you know, pass this extreme legislation, you know, such as all of these various measures, and in this case, one that is clearly unconstitutional.
Well, first of all, it's not extreme. The fact that he's pro-life, he never hid from that. He's been pro-life for as long as I've known him. So an election is about a lot of issues, but it's not about every issue. I mean, nobody asked him his position on a lot of things. And to say that if he didn't campaign on it, we can't actually bring it up to the legislature, there are people in our caucus who campaigned on that. They actually believe in protecting unborn children, especially when they can feel pain.
Well, let me make clear, I have no problem with people who, obviously it's a very, divisive type issue. People do, some are pro-life, some are pro-choice.
Yes.
And that we all understand, we respect that. And you're right. I mean, some legislators do campaign on these issues. But what the subject of Torinas' editorial is that the issues the governor campaigned on don't seem to be at the forefront. Instead, it's things that he didn't campaign on. He never told people he was going to cut the universities by $300 million. Now, that's a major fact. It's a major factor in people's mind. People care about the University of Wisconsin. I mean, people are very proud of it. Previous generations invested heavily to make it one of the best university systems in the country, if not in the world. Same thing, take this abortion ban. It's very divisive, very polarizing. He should have campaigned on it. This isn't some small, minor issue. It's something that people really care a lot about. Now, I don't deny what the Speaker says. Clearly, I think most people knew he was pro-life. But on these major issues, as Torinas suggested, and as I fully embrace that editorial, you ought to run for office with an agenda, elect me, and this is what I'm going to do.
Okay, now let's transition, and thanks for your help. Transitioning to 5 budget issues. The governor recommended his budget, gave it to the ledge on February 3rd. So you heard from your members, you've heard from constituents, you've heard from voters. Now let's go down the issues, and let's start with the UW. Both proposals, the cut over 2 years of $300 million in exchange for the new governing autonomy. 5 weeks later, is that going to pass?
Well, there's a lot of factors that have to go into it. First of all, Governor Walker started with a basic principle that every one of our members ran on, which is we're not going to raise income and sales taxes to put more money into the state's coffers. We want to keep it in families' pockets. So that started out. So assuming that we have the revenues that are coming in, Governor Walker said the first priority that we have to do is take care of those who don't have health care. That's what Medicaid's all about. So the vast majority of the revenues that are coming in are funding a single program, and that's Medicaid.
63%, according to the Fiscal Bureau. Excuse me.
That's okay, but you're right. I mean, so the vast majority of money. Yep, that's right. So the second thing is, then you say to yourself, what are other priorities? Well, in the second year of the biennium, we're increasing funding for schools. So we're doing some things that are, I think, positive. We're funding a lot of programs that are important to the state, but you can't have it all. So I am upset, and I told the governor that. I think that the cut to the university was deeper than I would have done. I'd like to hope that we're going to have new revenues in May. If we have new revenues, of course, our first priority is going to be K-12 education. It always has been, always will be. But hopefully a priority will also be to try to look and say, are there things we can do for the university differently? Now, my priority, to be quite honest, is the smaller universities, Parkside, Whitewater. Places that really would have a harder time dealing with a large cut than a bigger institution which has more ability to generate revenue. So while I love Madison and I want to make sure that the entire university has the smallest cut we can, I also want to make sure that those smaller campuses get the priority if we're able to find funding.
You just want Whitewater to keep winning championships.
Well, you know, they've done such a good job, it's hard not to be proud.
Well, okay, but is it fair to say, if your caucus had to vote on the governor's plan, $300 million cut and autonomy, would it pass today?
Well, the problem with autonomy is that giving autonomy to folks who want to use it to change the institution, I think that makes sense if they want to use it. But when I see that the regents at their last meeting came out and said, we're going to do nothing, we're going to have no changes. No changes to tenure, no changes to all these different things. Well, then why are we giving you the autonomy to do nothing with it if you're going to protect the status quo? So, you know, and I think we've already seen that when the university had the chance to raise tuition, they raised it way beyond their needs just because they could stock the money away. So a lot of people in my caucus have concerns about giving them unfettered access to raise tuition. So I think in the end, I would rather try to give them some flexibility, so, you know, and make sure they have a budget amount they can live with and sustain it itself over time, purchasing so they don't pay DOA and all kinds of things that are just really shuffling money around. But in the end, I would rather have a smaller cut than all this autonomy, which I'm not sure how much it's going to actually do for them.
Peter, thanks for your patience on the issue of the governor's recommendations on the UW system.
I think it'll devastate the university system. We may never be a top 5, top 10 institution ever again in our, at least within the next generation, if they make these deep of cuts. You know, I've served on the UW Parkside Foundation board for, you know, probably a decade or more. And I do appreciate the speaker's remarks in regard to those smaller institutions, because clearly they don't have the ability to make it up. We have virtually no unrestricted reserves whatsoever. And I was on the finance committee, so I know, you know, where the money's at, and there's just virtually nothing there. But, you know, for UW-Madison as well, it's a major issue because it's penny wise and pound foolish. The average faculty member at UW-Madison brings in close to $250,000 a year. So you cut them, they're leaving. I mean, they have plenty of opportunities to go to Harvard or Princeton or Stanford because it's a world-class institution. So across the board, this is devastating for the university system. And the autonomy doesn't even make up 10% of the cuts. So even if we were to give them exactly what they want in autonomy, and I share some of the speaker's concerns in regard to allowing each institution to raise their own tuition, I think that would be a mistake. I think the system as a whole should be run by the regents. But clearly they need flexibility. I mean, and you know, on whether it be purchasing or things of that sort, that will save them money. There's no question about it. We should give them that autonomy in that regard. But this is, make no mistake about it, this would be a devastating cut that would have implications for the quality, for the ability of students to graduate on time, get the course offerings they need for a generation or more. And once you lose these top-notch faculty members that are world-class, it's hard to attract them once again. I mean, as Chancellor Blank said, we already had our first couple casualties with faculty members that saw what the governor planned to do and said, I don't want any part of it.
But Peter,
let's remember, though, under Chancellor Biddy Martin, they asked for the same flexibilities and were willing to take a cut that was the same size just for Madison. So when I hear some of these things, it's very hard for me to empathize entirely, because Biddy Martin saw the exact same numbers that Chancellor Blank did, and she was willing to make the deal.
But let me respond. Biddy Martin's not here anymore, and for good reason. I think Biddy Martin misled the Board of Regents. Biddy Martin, I don't think, really had a grasp on what was needed for UW-Madison. So, you know, I'm glad she's gone. I think she did a disservice to this university for the way she comported herself and for the approach that she took, which was underhanded. So I'm glad she's gone.
But let's remember the cut that's happening under Governor Walker is about the size of the one that happened under Governor Doyle. And I didn't hear Democrats complaining about the loss of the university and how the world was going to come to an end.
Peter,
and here we sit, we're in 1997. It's going to be about the same amount of money we're spending today after the cuts that the Democrats put in and the cuts that Republican.
Wait, let's
not post for Holy
wait, but no,
I've got four other budget issues.
But I'm glad you brought that up, because whole different spectrum. First of all, it's not in the same magnitude. Secondly, though, when you cumulatively continue to cut the same institutions, their ability to respond is restricted, and they don't have the reserves because we made them spend down the reserves. Back then they had the ability to raise tuition, to grasp this change and to cope with this change. They no longer have that ability. So this cut is an entirely different proposition.
Peter, I want to follow up on something Robin said. If there is unexpected windfall tax collections, the Speaker said it should go for K-12 and then the UW system. Would that be the recommendation of you and your caucus as well? First priority on any windfall K-12 or something else?
Well, look, for us, I would say, first of all, those are both very important priorities to spend whatever resources that we're able to get to make up for the devastating cuts that this governor has bestowed upon K-12. I mean, when I hear the Speaker say it's our priorities, it isn't the governor's priorities. We're in a time of relative prosperity, and he's still cutting the K-12 system. Rural districts are really now telling us they may have to shut down. I mean, these cuts are devastating for K-12. But our solution is very clear. I'm glad you brought together with health care, because we take the Badger Care expansion money. That would virtually fund the entire university cut that they're proposing. We would take other steps that we'll be proposing both in finance and on the floor that will provide the kind of resources through things like Badger Care that make perfect sense. It's a win-win. Right now, our taxpayers are paying too much because the governor wants to run for president, and he's sacrificing our fiscal stability because he wants to be the most right-wing governor in the country.
New budget issue, Peter. Are Democrats prepared to support the so-called jock tax, where NBA players and the taxes they pay would help pay for the Bucks Arena downtown?
I think there's some support for that. We have not caucused on that issue. Personally, I think that makes some sense. I mean, I actually would have to say I think the governor did a relatively good job on this in terms of trying to identify revenue that we would lose if, in fact, the Bucks weren't here anymore. Now, of course, my preference and the Speaker's preference, I am quite certain, would be that we would have taken the money that the Hard Rock and the Menominee offered, which would have fully funded the Bucks Arena. Now, I'm hoping the governor meets.
We're going to get to that casino.
Yeah,
go ahead.
but the governor meets continually. He was down with David and Charles Koch in Palm Springs. Widely reported back 3 weeks ago. He's in Sheldon Adelson out in Las Vegas. These people have a lot of money. I hope he's not just raising money for himself. Maybe he can find a donor to make up for that great opportunity he turned down.
So you like the jock tax in concept. My follow-up question
I think it's a reasonable proposal for dealing with this. Let me put it that way. But I think there's better options.
What about using taxes paid by NBA players to issue up to $220 million in bonds? Are you also comfortable with the 220?
Look, let me put it this way. I think that we have to keep the Bucks here. I think it's a priority. I'm glad to see the governor has made it a priority. I know the Speaker's trying to work on that. I think we can get a bipartisan solution to this, and I think it's very important. And I think the governor has done a relatively good job with a difficult issue on this specific point. But could have did better.
That was like a compliment.
Could have taken the Menominee Hard Rock money. That would have been a far better solution.
5 weeks after the governor recommended this, are you not comfortable with $220 million? Is that too high?
220 is too much.
And let's dial it back to give me a number.
When you think about where the state of Wisconsin is, with or without the Bucks, of course Peter's exactly right. We want to do what we can to keep the Bucks. They're not the same economic driver that the Brewers or the Packers are, but they are certainly a positive for our state, and especially Milwaukee. And I would not want to see them leave. So having that as a basic principle, if they would leave, we have about $100 million that we have to spend on the Bradley Center just to bring it up to the current standards, and we owe about $20 million in bonds. So I guess I look at it and say, we're going to spend $120 million either to keep him here or to see him leave. So that's the bottom line number for what I think is reasonable. Is there a number beyond that? I mean, 120 to 150, maybe a little bit north of that, but I think our caucus is comfortable in that range because it's what we'd spend anyways, and a little bit more to keep a business here. I think that's a reasonable number. Hopefully, I've met with Mayor Barrett, I've met with Chris Abele. Mayor Barrett brings up some good points that we have to know what the cost of the entire project is. I've said the same thing, that it's hard to say if the project's $1 billion, is our number still 220? If it's $500 million, is it still 220? So we need to know the scope of that.
Okay. Yeah. Did the City Council and Mayor Barrett's support for the streetcar hurt the arena issue?
No doubt about it.
Why?
From my caucus's perspective, if you can find $50 million of property tax levy for a trolley to run around in a circle, and then you have a huge event like the Bucks leaving or staying with all the economic development can be around there, well, how can you not find $100 million for that? If the trolley's worth 50, you don't think the Bucks and the arena and all the economic development around it are going to be worth more than that? So that has caused us consternation because people look and say, Brown County paid for it all themselves. The 5 counties paid for the stadium all themselves. And now Milwaukee doesn't want to put any skin in the game because they spent it all on the trolley. That's a big problem.
Next budget issue is transportation.
But let me just say one thing. That's not true, that Milwaukee spent it all. The mayor's been very clear that he will bring forward funds to help to fund this arena, whether it be through street improvements, whether it be through other things that the city normally does. So I don't think that's entirely accurate to put it that way.
But he has said no new taxes, no additional taxes. I mean, so it's just TIF development, which when you use a lot of that to do the streetcar, it means there's less available to do the arena.
But but the only thing I'd say, I mean, the MMAC Greater Milwaukee Committee, is my understanding, they're widely supportive of both projects. They think they complement each other, not hurt each other.
Transportation funding. I was so intrigued when co-chairman John Nygren asked Secretary Gottlieb what would happen if the $1.3 billion in bonding was cut back by $500 million. Here's my question. Is that the early position of your caucus on borrowing for transportation, Mr. Speaker?
The early position of our caucus is that the $1.3 billion that Governor Walker proposed in bonding is not sustainable. And we are not going to have that level of bonding. What's the appropriate level? We are still having those discussions because we want to put new revenues on the table. I mean, you have different options, and I have been pretty upfront about what they are. You can raise gas tax revenues with an offsetting income tax cut or some other tax cut. You can do a registration fee increase. You can do things that are more creative, like a red light camera or things like that. I mean, there are only so many ways that you can raise revenue for transportation. So either we cancel projects, which is certainly not my hope. I don't want to cancel any projects because we already don't do all the ones that are needed, especially in southeastern Wisconsin. I want the north-south to be finished. There's literally a bottleneck right in the middle of my district as it goes around it. So I don't want to have less money for transportation. I want more. So I think that the idea of cutting back bonding would be only if we can't find a revenue source, because borrowing the money only eats away at all the future revenues where we can't spend it on basic things.
Does Peter?
Let me tell you what he said. What he really meant by that is he's recognizing just how irresponsible the governor's budget is, and how the governor's kicking a bigger can down a longer road, and just how wrong that is. I mean, it is unanimously opposed by the road builders and by the, the various building trades groups. It's just a very irresponsible approach to take. Now, I'm glad to hear the speaker's points, and we largely agree on this issue from a capital standpoint. But what the governor's put forward, it's amazing to me he has any support for president when people look at what he's doing in this state.
If the Democrats oppose $1.3 billion for bonding, then are your Assembly Democrats ready to some of these revenue raisers, gas tax, registration fee, some of these options recommended by the Secretary?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats, the last time you did the indexing on
2006, it stopped.
2006, you have more Democrats than you have Republicans that supported that measure.
You mean to not get rid of it?
Not get. Okay. No, we have not caucused on this, but I know that there is strong support.
Do you personally want to bring back indexing, Peter?
I would be willing to bring back indexing.
Would you be willing to raise the gas tax?
I would be willing to raise the gas tax. Now, my preference, though, would be to do tolling, which
we agree on that
both
too.
support.
Yep.
To me, it's a lack of leadership.
Paul Ryan came out in favor of it.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And President Obama has made statements that he is open to this as well. It is poor leadership on the governor's part that he has not been working on this. Both the speaker and I
was with you until that very moment.
have offered to help support this. We clearly need it. It makes the most sense of any other revenue source. These red lights and these cameras in school zones would bring in revenue. I think that's a responsible approach to take. You increase safety at the same time as you're bringing in revenue that's desperately needed. There are measures out there that I think could help to resolve this irresponsible element of the governor's budget.
Okay, I've got 3 other topics and time is slipping away, and I want to respect your time. The changes to senior care, that you must apply for Medicare Part D first, has been debated before. Is that going to pass this session?
In our Republican agenda, we were pretty straightforward in saying that senior care is something that's valuable. I certainly can see perhaps allowing all the people who are in senior care to keep it. And maybe allowing people who are new, maybe they would enroll in Medicare Part D. I mean, there might be some hybrid. Is senior care going away? No.
Okay. Peter, quickly?
Well, I mean, it's another area where we agree how irresponsible the governor's budget is. I mean, this is something that seniors depend upon for their very life. I mean, these prescription drugs are essential. So, you know, we once before rejected that element of the governor's budget. We need to reject it again.
Now, one thing I do
we'll have thousands of signatures incidentally. I know the Speaker values those petitions, so we'll be presenting those very soon, and hopefully that'll sway the Republicans. We just need to just reject it.
Just one thing that I want to make sure is clear for any senior who's watching. If you are on senior care, you pay $30 a year to be part of the program. Good benefits. If you're on Medicare Part D, you pay, the cheapest plan is $180. So I don't want to make it seem like we're saving people thousands of dollars, but I like giving people more options rather than fewer. So if we can keep that and save people a couple $100 a year and do it in a way that doesn't cost a lot to the state, I think that's a benefit that we should keep, or at least allow people who are on it to keep it.
Okay, 2 more subjects, and we're into overtime here, and I appreciate it. Is withdrawal of Wisconsin from Common Core going to be part of the budget, Mr. Speaker?
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, I think that the whole goal for us is to have it be done in an accountability bill where we can actually pass something to say if you're a public or private school and getting taxpayer dollars, you're going to be held to the same or similar standards. Our Common Core repeal is part of that. It's making sure that, once again, I think you already know, and I want to be as clear as we can, Common Core is a decision that is made by local school districts that they see in what is in the best interest of the kids in their school. We have had a push from DPI where they signed this nationwide agreement. They've really been pushing it down on school districts, so that's wrong. But ultimately, it's a decision that every school district has to make for themselves. What we want to do is just to reiterate that so the DPI can't use the power of their office to try to instill a one-size-fits-all solution where certain districts, Kenosha and Racine, both have Common Core. If they like it, they can keep it. But if Burlington and Twin Lakes don't want it, they shouldn't have an opportunity to be forced to get it if they don't think it's best for their kids.
Peter on Common Core?
It's so clear. I mean, I've never seen such an army of educators here as when they tried to repeal it in the last session. I mean, the educational establishment is just, you know, apoplectic at the constant changes the Republicans bring forward in education. They can barely keep up now. This is another example of right-wing extremism on steroids. And it's just one more thing. Just one more thing being put forward to try and help the governor in his presidential run. It's not our job to help the governor win his party's nomination. It's our job to protect Wisconsinites, to look out for the best interests, and the educators all across this state. This is something they feel extremely strongly about. I hope we respect that.
My final subject is, you both supported the Kenosha Casino. Let me ask you this. Your read of the governor, was he ever close to approving it, or was he pretty predisposed to not approve it in the more than a year that he studied it? Mr. Speaker?
You know, I always thought it was a long shot, just because Governor Walker has personally been opposed to gambling. I think that you could make a case that there were more downsides for statewide taxpayers with the potential to have hundreds of millions of dollars of bills that we would have to pay out. Lawsuits would have occurred had the Kenosha Casino approved. So I always thought it was a long shot, but I thought it was worth it for our area of the state. I really believe that.
Well,
so, I mean, in the end, Governor Walker made his decision. It did not surprise me. I was disappointed. I wish he would have made a different choice. But I also now realize, too, we got to move on. I mean, we can keep talking about it, but it's a done deal.
The only thing I'd say, though, is if Governor weren't run for president, I believe he would have signed that deal.
Why do you think that?
Because he told me personally on a number of occasions, I'm sure he did the same with you, and he even said publicly he wanted a win-win. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a colossal failure of leadership that he wasn't able to get to a win-win. A governor has a lot of tools at their disposal. So, I mean, first of all, I think that he wouldn't have had the political pressure that he got from the 600 Iowa conservatives, which I think clearly influenced his decision.
It had nothing to do with it.
You know, the Milwaukee Urban Milwaukee
he
magazine
said the day before he went to Iowa.
Urban Milwaukee magazine said it was Sheldon Adelson and he didn't want it, which I have no idea if that's true or not. But clearly, the other thing is, I mean, we have a part-time governor at best right now. He's rarely here. He's not even transparent about when he's in the state, when he's not in the state. I think people have a right to know when he's working for the state's interests versus his own personal interests.
He's always working for the state's interests.
Not only is he a part-time, I mean, increasingly he's looking like an absentee governor. He's just not here, you know, present, trying to get the job done. Had he not been running for president, he would have signed this deal.
Wow, I should get out my prescription pad because he needs pills for the Walker derangement syndrome.
As
he has been here all day, holy cow, it's mostly anti-Walker.
Well, thank you. I had other questions, but I'll reserve that. I think the next civil dialogue prior to we actually begin voting on the budget. How's that sound, Jeff?
Sounds good.
Great, very good.
Speaker Robin Voss, Democratic leader.
All right, very good.
Peter
Barca, nice job.
Thank you.
Speaker, good job.
First civil dialogue of the session. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks.